on the 29th, so 2 days before Halloween. So we have Mercury entering Sagittarius at 7:02 a.m. Eastern Time. So because it's early in the morning, depending on your time zone, could be on the 28th, late at night, or sometime on the 29th. We were already talking about Mercury with it reaching the pre-shadow degree point of 20 degrees Scorpio. It doesn't stop just because it reaches the pre-shadow. It keeps going. It's just a marker for us to understand its point in evolution of this cycle. So it keeps going, tra-la-la-la, goes through the remaining 9 or so degrees. Then it enters Sagittarius, the next sign after Scorpio. And then we know on the 9th, so 11 days later, it's going to station retrograde, and then it's going to start backing up. So we're only going to get through, it moves fast, so we're going to get through some degrees. It's not like we're going to get through like 0.8, which is what Neptune is doing in Pisces. We're going to get through some degrees into Sagittarius, but we only have the few days at that point, or around a week. Mercury represents the mind, speech, writing, technology, modes of transportation. Mercury, mythologically, it's the messenger. So it's like a handy way of thinking about it. Like Hermes, it's like has a little wings on his feet moving around. So whatever visual helps you to remember. And Sagittarius is the adventurer, philosopher. It's very unfiltered. And it wants to not only obtain knowledge to learn, but it wants to apply it. So it's like, oh, this is so interesting. I want to like go travel there so I can learn hands-on. Or I want to teach that. I want to think about all of these concepts, philosophizing, etc. So it wants to do something with the information, with the wisdom, understanding of physics, the universe, religion, spirituality, like really, really big picture stuff because it's Jupiter ruled. The last time that Mercury was in Sagittarius, so we can look back here for our reference point, was November 2nd, 2024 to January 8th, 2025. Now we would say, hey, that's a long time. Why is that so long? I thought Mercury was only in a sign for 3 weeks. That's because it was bopping around and there was another retrograde. So it retrograded also in Sagittarius last year. So during the next couple weeks before the stationing, so between now and when it actually stations retrograde on November 9th, we can expect that our attention, at least for that preview period before it officially parks and backs up, we're going to get a little preview. We're going to get a little sample of what it's like having Mercury in Sagittarius. Once we get out of the retrograde, it's going to have more degrees where it'll be normal. So this is the preview of that. So when we have Mercury in Sagittarius, we can expect that our attention, because again, it's our mind, to shift to the big picture, to learning and seeking understanding. So that new focus, can't forget about this. So on the 29th, again, we have the ingress. It's shifting. All of a sudden, our mind is going to different ideas, thoughts, topics that we care about, where we want to spend our time. But on the same day, on the 29th, and I'll throw this in the chat, Mercury runs into an opposition with another outer planet. We were talking about Neptune earlier, but it runs into an opposition, which means across the circle in a sister sign, 180 degrees away, exactly, with Uranus, which is currently retrograde. And at this point, it's going to be, again, chilling at 0 degrees Gemini because it's retrograding and preparing, just like Neptune, only, a few days before is re-entering Pisces. Uranus is preparing in short time in November to re-enter Taurus. So again, we have all these planets that are backing up, and they're all transitioning between signs because they're retrograding on the line. So Mercury, before that happens, runs into this opposition. So it's slowing down, preparing to station retrograde, and runs into an opposition with a big, revolutionary, bold, full of surprises outer planet that is Uranus. So this oppositions represent a challenge. It means that it's like we're being confronted with something. It wants us to think, Mercury, think in radically new and different ways. We're being confronted with something that comes out of nowhere that's like, whoa, I have to recalibrate how I'm thinking about things. That's new. That's different. That was not what I thought was going to happen. That's what we are anticipating, mentally planning for, happening on that day. So what this means is that Mercury will be at 0 degrees of Sagittarius, which is the sister sign of Gemini. So they are sitting across from each other, and they're going to reach the exact degree and minutes to, boom, be in the opposition. And that is happening 8.5 hours after Mercury enters the sign. Mercury moves quickly, which means it's going to pass this energy in, X amount of hours, definitely by the next day. It'll be moving out of that orb. So once we see it pass 5 degrees, again, it'll be out of the orb. And then we know some days later on the calendar, it's going to station retrograde. And then guess what's going to happen? It's going to back up and it's going to hit this opposition again. Uranus isn't going to be in exactly the same spot. It's going to be pretty darn close because it moves so slowly. But Mercury is going to hit it again, and then it's going to station direct, and then it's going to hit it a third time. So we want to make note, because this is the first of 3. But this is going to keep happening over the course of the next several weeks. Okay, so we have the 29th, the 19th, and the 10th. So those are the 3 opposition days. Keep in mind, they're not always in the same signs. So there's a bit of a different flavor to them. So for this first one, we're talking about Sagittarius, and we're talking about Gemini. For the second one, we're talking about Scorpio and Taurus. Okay? For the third one, we're also talking about Scorpio and Taurus. So this one has a slightly different flavor than the other 2. And when we have Mercury in the retrograde portion, we're not as mentally clear. So it might be harder for us to adjust and pivot and communicate effectively or clearly to whatever it is that is popping up. Better to be prepared. Exactly. So as I mentioned earlier, like all of the transits that we're talking about, except for that new moon in Libra, these are all like ... They're happening, but they don't just end with these days. These are coming up again. They are extended. They are shifting. They are changing over the next couple months. Ridiculous amount in Sag, Sun, Moon, Uranus, Neptune, 10th and 11th, Gemini, no planets worth. So again, we're talking about very limited degrees. We don't have to focus on the entire sign. For the Mercury through Sagittarius, we can focus on that. So if, as an example, Carrie, you have a bunch of planets that are in Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, Uranus, Neptune, through the 10th and 11th, then you're picking up on, or you could look for, forecast out, what are the days that Mercury hits each of those. So when it hits the Sun, that's the equivalent of like a normal like transit Cazimi. So it's activating your ego. I'm saying this in very simple terms just to rapid fire them. The moon, activating your emotions. So it's mind and speech connected with the emotions. Uranus with change. Again, you're going to be experiencing the transit version already. Neptune, it's going to be your mind and your dreams, illusion, honesty, dishonesty, sense of reality, perception. Perception is kind of the biggest one. So those are days you're going to want to circle the lead up and out, especially for the outer planets because they have a wider orb because they like radiate so much energy. So I'll do your houses first and then I'll go back to you, Misty. So if you're looking at the 10th and the 11th, and you can see where the different planets are placed and how that is oriented. But 10 and 4 for the 0 degrees. So that is your career versus your private life. So the thing that's being activated, the thing where there could be sudden changes or surprises or things that you're having to confront and think about in a different way, related to what's public versus what's private, related to your home versus your career, related to your family versus authority. So many options when we have like these activations, and it's really hard to predict with Uranus. It's retrograde, so we can keep that in the back of mind too, that it's like it's slightly subdued because it's not in direct motion. At least it's slightly more reflective, but it's still like, hey, what about that? So it does a quick turn as Mercury moves through the rest of the 10th and then goes into the 11th. Then, so again, your mind is thinking about how you present your reputation, your long-term career, your arc, relation to work in a sense. And then it shifts into thinking about family networking. And that can happen on social media, that can happen in person, that can happen in your community. And sometimes, depending on the transit, especially because we have them pulling into each other, it could mean that some of that networking you're doing could be for work, it could be for business, but also could just be for you on the personal level. And now for Misty, we had the first and the second house. So we're starting with the identity, the self. So it's the self-reflection, thinking about who you are, thinking about how you identify, thinking about your appearance. How do you look? With it at the part where it goes retrograde, that could be a little self-consciousness, but when it's in direct, you're just thinking about like how you are, who you are. And then when it goes into post retrograde, for whatever portion of that goes into the second house, you're thinking about focusing on your finances, focusing on your values, what is important, how am I treating myself as important, how am I thinking about myself as important, making sure that I value myself in addition to my physical monetary assets, thinking about how you are earning money. Always want to differentiate when we're talking about Mercury. It's what our mind is doing, focusing on, supporting, writing, communicating in conversations in these spaces. And anything else that's like moving the needle, that's more Mars. Like if we're going to start a project, that's more Mars. But for Mercury, like having a conversation, initiating a conversation could feel still like a huge step. It's like, I really need to talk to somebody about X, or I need to brainstorm on Y. Really supported by Mercury moving through whatever house we're talking about. Got a nice little Sagittarius in my fourth house. Yeah, so same thing I was mentioning with Carrie. It's like just you can find those dates by using the transit chart. So like what Misty was asking about, like you move the dial and you click it until you get to that degree point and say, okay, so that's the day that I care about. That's the day that I want to circle. And then you understand what Mercury means and you understand what those planets and points are that you have in that sign. Mix all those together. What's the signature of that day? Because Mercury moves quickly. So we're pretty much just like, it's a flash in the pan. It's somewhere in and around a day, and then it's going to move on and move out. When you have a stellium, it's always good to just dedicate a little bit of the extra time, especially when you have, I know for Carrie, you have the luminaries. Those are pretty important. Abigail, I don't know which planets you have, but especially for the inner planets, the personal planets. If you're talking about Mercury or Mars or Venus, But again, it's all of them are interesting. It's like, oh, but I also want to know if it's Saturn. I also want to know if it's Jupiter. Like they all bring a little bit of something to the table. So if you know that a transit is coming, and this one you could be catching some strays from a retrograde, definitely want to check those dates and have an understanding. A reminder that I also have a mentorship program. So I have two different personal transit mentorships. So if you're like, I want to better understand how the heck to figure out what I'm looking at here, how to plan ahead, develop strategies, do interpretations, I have two different offerings, different lengths of time, so that we can work together, meet each month, have little homework assignments, little practices, little working sessions, so that you can really develop your skills in understanding these personal transits. So if you wanted to go back in time, if you wanted to go ahead in time, if you wanted to analyze something in the present. So yeah, if you have questions about that too, then again, feel free to reach out.